Greetings. Welcome to Speak Nerd and Enter.
Yeah. All right, Kelly, what did you want to talk about this week? What'd you see? Because really everything we talk about depends on what you actually got caught up on.
What was I supposed to watch? I watched more of Sandman, and then
Oh, you did?
a few other random things on Netflix. Nothing sci-fi or interest. Well, I started this show today on Netflix just because I'm a sucker for Korean zombie flicks. Like
Mhm.
Train to Busan was amazing, and so I started this series, We're All Dead or something like that.
With high school kids?
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
no.
I've heard of it, but I haven't seen it.
Okay, all I have
Which
to tell you,
one? Which one?
All of Us Are Dead or something like
Yeah,
that.
I saw
And so
part of that.
the
Yeah.
opening scene, okay, so it starts out with some kids just beating the shit out of another kid, right? Kid turns out to be infected with some sort of zombie virus. So he's in the hospital turning into sort of this, killing machine, and his father beats him to death with a Bible. At that point, I was locked in. I had to see what happened next.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah.
That show.
Train to Busan was amazing, though. If you haven't seen
Train
that,
to Busan was great.
It was
Train to
amazing.
Busan was amazing. The thing about Korea, I don't get it. Korea is like consumed with the idea of the zombie.
Mhm.
They are all in on the zombie
See,
stuff.
with them, zombies are a metaphor for North Koreans.
I think so. But I think the zombie thing in society is just the metaphor for any sort of thing that's happened, like the pandemic, for example. I think it's this fantastical world you get to play around in, so that you can deal with, okay, if the crap hit the fan, what would I do next?
And the thing that bugs me about it, though,
Mhm.
because it's Korea, it's so hard for me to empathize with the characters on the show because nobody over there has any firearms. And so they're out there with the bow. The part where she's out there, they're on the archery team or whatever, and she goes out with the bow and arrow hitting zombies and all that. And I'm thinking to myself, none of that would work, first of all. Secondly, it's a stupid thought. It really is a dumb thought. And I don't get it. And a lot of their social commentary that they go into, they do some weird crap. The Koreans do some weird crap when they get into the whole high school level zombie thing, or what was the other one where they had the demons were showing up to kill people and drag them to hell or whatever. And
My Little Pony?
No.
The very
No,
special episode.
That was written actually pretty well. No, I can't remember the name of it. It was like these three demons would show up and just beat the piss out of somebody until they died in public, and then burn them. And then
That doesn't sound like the basis of a movie. That's like a short.
No, it was a TV show. It was a series, and it's very Korean. That's all I can say. They get some good stuff. They get some decent, cool ideas, but then it goes all weird, like soap opera-ish kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I keep expecting like the Quartermains to show up or something, or the, Korean equivalent of them, and the weather machine that they had with the evil prince guy and all that stuff, and the sword, the magic sword, all that sort of thing. Train to Busan was great. Train to Busan was the total opposite of that stuff.
Yeah.
And
they made a sequel to that, but I haven't seen it.
No, don't see it. You'll ruin your experience of the first one.
Yeah.
Yeah. The dude who was in The Immortals, who was in Train to Busan, he's amazing. I love that guy. He needs to get more work. Mm-hmm. That guy's really awesome. He reminds me of the dude who played in Rogue One. I can't remember his name.
I've not seen Train to Busan yet. I recorded it.
Oh, you haven't?
No, I recorded it and sat down to watch it. And my recording, I guess it didn't get the subtitles. So I was watching it in Korean, and I was like, well, I'm not going to do that. So
you don't speak Korean?
I don't speak Korean. Konnichiwa.
Well, you can do it without the dialogue, and you get the general gist of what's happening.
Konnichiwa.
You're not wrong. I know that's Japanese.
Yeah. I'm just thinking of the irony of that with the
I do that all the time. So the 18-year-old, her best friend is Korean, right? And so when I was dating her mom, she told me, she's like, oh, her and her friend, she's gonna pretend she doesn't like speak English really good, when she comes over, even though she does. And I was like, cool. And I was totally ready to like play on and be like, real lad, konnichiwa, welcome to America. Like I was ready to lay, but then like she never came over, never did anything, and it was like 2 weeks before she finally came in, and she just gave up on it. And I was like, I was so ready to like jump right in there and play along and do the stupid American thing, just speak really loud and slow and
giving her
use the wrong language.
Sushi.
Yeah. Talking about stupid Americans, I'm sitting in Santiago, Chile, with a buddy of mine. We're down there for work and trying to grab some lunch, and these other Americans walk in, and they're sitting at this table right next to us. The waiter brings them, Cokes with ice, and the lady stops the waiter and says, "Is this made with filtered water?" And the waiter said, "No." And so she's like, "Oh, we'll take it. We don't want any of the water unless it's filtered. Just bring us the Cokes without water, without ice." It's just crazy to watch Americans actually do that abroad.
Is Brazil known for their bad water? Like I know Mexico is. They're like, when you go down there, don't drink the water.
Nobody in Brazil drinks tap water. You drink bottled water in Brazil, but the ice is fine.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's cold.
And Santiago's in Chile.
It's chilly down there, so the ice is chilly.
Yeah, I'm glad you caught that, Kelly. Yeah.
Other side of the continent. That's okay.
Mark would not only have been asking about the ice, he would have been in the wrong country altogether. Oh my God. Asking the guy in Chile. So is the Brazilian water good? Is it safe?
Yeah.
Speaking Portuguese to him.
Hola, ¿cómo estás? ¿Dónde está el baños?
That would work in Santiago, but not Brazil.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because like my wife is a Spanish teacher. She speaks Spanish. And when we were moving here, we had a truck loaded full of stuff. And so people from the church were like supposed to come help, but like nobody did. And we were like, F it. And so we literally went down to where all the Hispanic dudes are like hanging out. We were like, where can we go get some help? And we grabbed like 4 guys and drove back up here. And because she could speak Spanish everywhere. We're driving up and they're all talking Spanish. They're like, because she's, Caucasian. And they're like, well, how do you speak Spanish? She goes, oh, her ex-husband was a native Spanish speaker. And so they're talking about that, and one of them's like, "Oh, do you speak Spanish?" And I'm like, "No." And I literally am like throwing out like the 4 words. I was like, "Oh yeah, I speak Spanish. No cebolla, donde está el baños, carne asada." Like the 7 phrases that I knew.
So what did you think of the rest of Sandman, Kelly? Since you went through that.
Okay, I like the episode with Death and with the guy that he meets every 100 years at the tavern. I thought that was really.
Yeah.
I wanted more of that, but I also think I identified why I don't really dig the rest of the show, because I watched the episodes after that with the vortex and I'll be honest, I fell asleep. I woke up again.
For the parts that you saw, did you understand what I was saying about how the Void character is just not interesting because it's so check the box, got to be a victim, got to be.
It felt like a Doctor Who episode to me.
Yes, I get that.
You know what I mean?
I get that, but I also the thing that kept coming back to me, Sean, was your comment about why does everybody write for a god as if this god is struggling to become more human, that's some sort of a higher plane of existence, and I started wrestling around with that in my head as why is that? Because I think I made a comment on the last time we got together where it's some sort of anti-religious bit, but I also think it's on some level trying to make it easier for us. I mean, rather than humanity trying to understand sort of what is the mind of an eternal being, who would have already understood the human existence and simply moved on from there. We're trying to drag it back down to make it more us, that we're some sort of higher level of a thing. And I don't know. It was an interesting.
It's very. We were talking about hubris. With science, it is so. That is exactly what I'm talking about, Kelly. It is so full of hubris to sit there and think, oh, we don't need to change. We need to change the God. The God doesn't get it. They need
Yeah.
to be better. You know, I was watching Akira the other day, and I don't know how much you remember that, but there was a bit in there about the little freaky girl was talking. You know, the one I'm talking, the little Benjamin Button girl. She was talking about Akira and saying how that everything that is has sense memory, right? Of of God's power, you know, that kind of thing. That there's this energy there, and that if you were able to realize it and evolve to where you could understand it and access it, you become like Akira. You become this godlike being. And so Tetsuo, she references him and says, "Now imagine, think of as a human, if you gave an amoeba the power of a human being." What would the amoeba do? It would sit there and eat everything around it. It would do everything it could to eat everything around it because it's still an amoeba, still as limited as it is, and would use that power for nothing more than the desires it has, you know, as a base creature. Well, that's what humanity would do. And, you know, I was sitting there thinking to myself, that's exactly right. That's what humanity would do. You get the power of a god, but you're still a human. You're going to be just absolutely out of control because you don't have the evolved intellect to be able to understand and control that kind of power. And so that's why it bugs me so much in those shows, Kelly, when I see that sort of thing, the whole Star Trek philosophy of, you know, humanity is so awesome, you know, up with people kind of thing, that humanity is not so hot. And to sit there in the hubris of saying something's been around for billions of years needs to get a lesson from you. You know,
Right.
I'm thinking,
Well, there was the episode, and I don't know. I don't want to get into spoilers and stuff in case somebody hasn't seen it. But at the same time, bloody go watch the
no,
damn
screw
show.
'em. Go see,
Um,
talk about it.
so
Spoiler
when-
alert.
That's
There
rich
you
coming
go.
from you, Kelly.
Yeah.
Have you seen this? No.
Hey.
Have you seen that thing? No. Did
You know
see
what?
the
Will
other-
that stop me from talking about it? No. And quite honestly, I was asking Lou about a movie yesterday, and she described one part of the movie, and now I don't want to see it because now I know that this thing happens. So now I'm just going to be thinking about it. So I'm like, you saved me time. Now I don't have to watch it. But no, when he brings the nightmare back and he's talking to her, and then he's going to punish her because she says that she's not afraid of Morpheus, right? And so he sends her to the darkness. But I mean, the whole show is like he's going to ultimately learn some sort of lesson from this, and then bring her back at the end, you know. And it's just like I call bullshit on the whole thing. You know, I mean, if Morpheus has been around all this time, what lesson are you going to teach him when you are not as he is? And I'm not saying that something should be
Right, but
precluded from
Morpheus
an
has spent the
evolution.
whole series walking around being a doofus, like, you know,
Well, yeah.
like clueless, like, oh, I don't know what's going on here. I don't know, and
Yeah, he's like a babe in the woods, right? I mean,
Right,
every
right.
time he turns around, he's fucking learning something.
yeah,
Pardon
and
my
he's
language.
he's emotionless, and you know,
Well,
and
he's-
I know
but
that's
see,
the way he
this
was
is-
written. I get all that, but I'm just like,
But see, this is the thing. He's not emotionless. He's read like he's supposed to portray emotionless, but he's not. He's not. It's not even written. Dr. Manhattan was written much, 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 much better in that vein, you know, where you're trying to get across this being that's so distant and dissociated and all that stuff. And then at the end discovers they still have a connection and, you know, all of that stuff.
Right.
There, it was done really well. Well, here, it just, to me, it did not land. To me, it was insulting. I wanted to go smack Neil Gaiman in the face.
Yeah,
Is what I wanted
yeah.
to
well,
do.
no,
How
Sean, what
dare
are you talking about the comic, or are you talking about this?
I'm talking about
Netflix
both.
series?
I'm talking
Okay,
about both.
because I've never done the comic.
Yeah.
So all I'm going on is the Netflix series where this guy's running around with an emotionless. Oh,
No.
You've never read the comic?
no, I've never
read it
that
5
comic.
times. No.
Okay, I don't
Yeah,
believe
Sid-
you. You're lying. You're just messing with me.
Sid would always try to push that on me. Sandman. Every
Yeah.
time, oh, you got to read Sandman. You got to read Sandman. You know.
Yeah, to me,
And so
looking back,
I
I think it was more like because it was so popular and everyone had read it, I was less interested in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I went
Yeah.
ahead and read it, and no, like I say, I like the sandbox. I like the sandbox,
Yeah.
and I see promise in that. But
Yeah.
instead of going the whole way, he would always stop short. He would always stop short of going that extra bit to make it truly memorable. Like you said, Kelly, those 2 episodes, they were good because they were closer to going that extra bit.
I throw in that one where in the diner, where the one guy goes in there and basically like strips away the lies people tell each other and then whatnot. Like that was it. That I put that up there as well.
But I didn't like the line at the end.
That's the thing. That's the only reason I don't have it. It was an up with people thing about, you're looking only at what they, their desires, but you're not looking at what they could be and how wonderful, and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And then the sun shines through and everybody's happy. And
but the part that really got me, and I went
on. Little bluebird lands on Morpheus's shoulder.
I had to pause the show.
What's that, girl?
Really went off on a tirade. When the girl who's the vortex goes in and meets with the social worker or something, trying to find her brother. Yeah. And she's like, well, I'm not going to stop and whatever. And then they, it's the next day and they're talking about, well, should I go apologize to her? And I was like, oh my God, I just, it's this, I just disliked that character so intensely, right? She's just sort of very Pollyanna, very goody two shoes. Debbie, who likes the show, she's over watching and she's like, she's just unbelievably good. Right. Yeah. And that's the thing. It just doesn't land. Whatever he was thinking, however he was writing it, it just doesn't land. And
that whole house full of people that she ended up with.
Yeah, I know.
None of them landed for me. I was like, what kind of weird, wacky, Brady Bunch nonsense was this? What was it, like a not an Airbnb, but a bed and breakfast kind of thing, whatever it was. I mean,
and it's not that you can't have a character who's in Kelly and I mean, God knows we've seen a lot of kids who grew up in horrible homes. It's not that you can't have that sort of thing. It's that the character themselves, the child, has to be more nuanced, has to be more realistic. This was just like it was written by someone.
This is a grown man trying to be super emotionally intelligent, writing for what amounts to a teenage girl. Right?
This should pull on this heartstring. This should pull on this heartstring.
Yeah, it's very
and by
forced.
This point, the person should be crying. And for me, it felt just too much like you're trying to manipulate me. Stop it.
Yeah.
Make the character a little more real. And that was what bugged me the most. That really disturbed me.
And you know what? What I wanted to see happen was she printed all those flyers. I want to see them put up everywhere, and nobody knows where the fucking kid is. Right? Pardon my language again. Yeah. Nobody knows where the kid is. It's going to be one of those milk carton things, right? I mean, he's just going to be that kid, and he'll go on Unsolved Mysteries like 12 years from now, and they'll say, "Hey, this is the last known photograph," and he never gets found. That would be a real episode.
Who made a good, who was a good, good character, right? Was the lady who drove, what's his face, the diner guy. Why can't I remember his name? But the lady who drove him around, hers was a good character. I liked her.
It was. I grant you that. That was nice.
That was great.
That's part of the frustrating thing about it. Good. Parts of it are really well done. Yeah. And parts of it are so ham-fisted. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's hot and cold.
But I will say, I mean, it's not like I don't like all of Neil Gaiman's stuff, because he also wrote, speaking of Doctor, he wrote one of those Doctor Who episodes, The Doctor's Wife. If you haven't seen that episode of Doctor Who, it is simply phenomenal. Well, very well done, right? But then I look at that, and then I look at Sandman, and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's been an evolution, hasn't there? There's been some growth efforts on Neil Gaiman's part, because the writing for Doctor Who was amazing.
Well, see, but he had the opportunity to change some of that, because he's writing for the show. Yeah, he's one of the show runners and stuff. Now, having said that, I would love for his show to continue on. I would love to see the sandbox again and, see what's going on with it and all that stuff. Yeah. I actually like the idea of Morpheus. I like the idea of him, and I'd just like to see it a bit different, but whatever. But yeah,
no, I'm with you. I would like to see it continue, but this is also why I typically don't watch things until they're very well into their run, and then I'll go start watching it, because I've given it time to actually start evolving, and I'll either hear from Jake that don't bother, it's not worth the time, or he'll say, yeah, you should start investing, because Jake is an early adopter of things, and I'm definitely somewhere in the late middle segment of adopting things, and so That's why I typically don't go in until later. But
Mhm.
because
Did
now,
you see-
I'm just going to
now-
sit here.
Let me
After
put this out, guys. So, one of our 6 listeners is a friend of mine who's in my Wednesday night role playing, and she was like, "You guys don't talk about Star Trek," and I was like, "You know what? You're right. We haven't talked about Star Trek
No, we've talked about
at all. What have we talked about?"
We denigrated
that
it
it
for a second.
sucked.
Well, all right then. All of Star Trek sucks. Neither of you are fans of Star
No,
Trek
you don't
at
remember
all.
I
me?
do like Star Trek, actually.
You don't remember me saying Star Trek. Here's the thing: Star Trek, like the movies that they had, the reboots and all that. Like the movies, I like those. The problem I have with Star Trek, this is the issue I have, is that Roddenberry was a very up with people person, and that's why I call any of those shows, any of those episodes where at the end it's all about, the power of humanity and how humanity is going to overcome because our weakness is our strength and, all that stuff. That's Star Trek to me. That's what that is, where everything ends up being the exact same at the end of the episode. It all goes back to what it was at the beginning. There's no cost, there's no, there's no change, there's no nothing.
Star Trek 2, The
And
Wrath of Khan.
Star Trek 3, where they found Spock again.
Oh, that's right. You got me. All right, you got
The
me.
Wrath of Khan was an Oscar-worthy.
That was
moment.
amazing.
That
Right.
was.
But see,
Right. That was a high watermark.
That
Yeah.
was the Top Gun Maverick moment where he goes in flies up and intercepts the missile, and then everything goes to black. And it's all about Kirk sitting there. No, not Spock. Spock, no, why? And everybody he's doing his
I
old
don't
hand
think that was
fisting
what
thing.
the script said.
No, but it should have.
Should
But
have, yeah.
yes, but it ends up with Spock dead, right? Great.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I mean, that was awesome. And then
Yeah, they
the
should have stopped
next
there.
one.
Yeah.
And I was like, come on, man. That was, you gave me something to hang the hat on. That was cool.
But it
And
did
then
set
you
up
took
the
it
one
away.
with the whales where they go back in time, which was a good time because he got to go one damn minute, Admiral.
Yeah. And call
Oh.
everybody witch doctors and all that stuff. Yes,
Oh
I
my
know.
gosh. Yeah.
But see, they kept that tone for the new movies. So even while I like the new movies, and I did, I liked
Yeah, the
what's
Chris
his face?
Pine.
Chris
Captain Kirk.
Pine.
Mhm.
He was good as that. And
Carl
what's
Urban
his
and
what's his
Doc,
face from Heroes? Yeah.
Yeah,
It was good as Spock. I loved him as Spock.
I'm trying to blank on his name. But
Yeah, I can't remember his name either, but he was
Quinto,
good.
I think is his last name.
Yes, Zachary Quinto.
Yeah, Zachary.
He was very good as Spock, but they kept the same tone. And I know you got to because you're playing to the fan base and you want the same fan base and everything. But that's why I couldn't fully connect with it. I want, look, man, I'm a dude like you, Mark, like you, Kelly, who likes Star Wars and likes 40K, right? And both of those, well, in the old days, Star Wars used to have people die and stay dead. Now they just come back. But there was a different tone to them. There was something a little more serious about it, a little more, I don't know. You had more investiture in those. Star Trek, man,
That sounded
never
like
had it.
That's kind of sounded like that Homer Simpson episode where he joins NASA and he's calling NASA to say, I knows what I like on TV. No, look, the movies. I've never been a super big fan of the Star Trek movies. Wrath of Khan is probably my favorite.
Now be careful because we don't want to lose 1/6 of our listeners.
No.
That's true. That's true.
I will say the saving grace of any Star Trek movie is William Shatner. I mean, simply an acting god. Okay, his bit in the Wrath of Khan where he shouts Khan from the center of that base and it just echoes across the universe. That's, I mean, I almost cried. But Next Generation was my favorite, and only seriously Next Generation was a fantastic series. I still like it.
Mhm.
I've started rewatching it recently. I had to skip the season, the early seasons with the stupid
Yes.
uniforms and
You're
Tasha
right.
Yar,
Yeah.
because she just needed to go. But I think the best episodes were.
You'll be happy to know I just saw something where Tasha Yar's character is returning on like the next season of Picard.
No, all right, whatever.
It was on Facebook, so it must be true.
I
The
reject
fact checkers
that.
would have got it if it wasn't.
I reject. Well, bring back the gelatinous monster that killed her. No, but I think there were a couple of good
Gelatinous
episodes.
cube. Yeah.
My favorite episode was the one where they run into the space probe that knocks out Picard, and then he lives an entire life on this planet, just through the memories of this planet, and I thought that was a brilliantly done episode. But I do agree with Sean on this, is that all of the episodes simply end, relatively the same. They all land with
Well, it's
somebody's in the
episodic TV, so
Yeah.
Well, but
that's
you
kind
had
of baked
episodic.
in.
No, you
Yeah.
had episodic TV where it changes. MASH had people
Well,
die,
True, but there's a lot more of that nowadays, because it's one thing I always hated about like Three's Company. It's like, oh no, here's the thing: somebody misunderstands what somebody said, and hilarity
drove me
ensues for the next
nuts.
half an hour, and then
Yeah.
you're all back to the same. So, like, I'm with you. Like, I'm not down with, but again, that was a very 70s and 80s television kind of thing. Whatever.
Even
I
before that,
hate
I
it.
Love Lucy was that, man.
Yeah, true.
people.
But nowadays, you're right. There are doing things like, The Walking Dead was like, oh, we killed off all kinds of people along the way and whatnot. So, have any of you watched Strange New Worlds?
Yeah, I have.
Okay,
Sure.
Like I'm 3 or 4 episodes in, and it can be a little like rah people first.
Yeah.
But I'm also liking, because essentially it's the original Star Trek series, but with the technology and effects and whatnot that we can produce today. So it feels a little
Remember,
more
I had
like a little more like the Carl Urban movies, but in show form. What was that?
Do you
Sean?
remember? I referenced, as a matter of fact, that first episode when they go to the planet and they're telling the people how we almost destroyed ourselves and all that. And I was saying they should have shown clips of like Godzilla and Independence
Day, Godzilla.
Yeah. The one, the 2 movies where the tidal waves destroyed everything. All that stuff. Yeah. Yeah. Should have been a
zombie
string
movies,
of that.
Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah. Planet of the Apes, all that crap. Should have shown them all that. Halloween, The Thing, Predator.
Dead was a great movie.
Scared the hell out of them. That would have been funny.
Look what we survived.
Kelly, my favorite episode for The Next Generation was. The Next Generation, my favorite episode was when they met the Borg.
Oh, yeah.
That was great, because that was the only episode that I had ever seen of Star Trek where they got their butt handed to them. And at the end, that was it. There was no, we're overcoming. It was, Picard saying, yep, you're right. Okay, you're right. We lost. Can we get out of here, please? And Q telling him, hey, you might want to check yourself with the whole humanity is awesome stuff, because there's a lot of crap out there that you don't know. And I thought that was a good episode. And I thought the Borg were a great villain.
I think the writing for Q, going back to the idea of talking about something that's eternal and everlasting.
Yes.
I think the character of Q was done really well.
For most of it. But remember, towards the end of that series, they even had Q come in and say, oh, Picard, you're my favorite. You're my best friend. You taught me what it was to be whatever the hell he was.
Right.
And I was like, come on. It's like, come on. Can't you let at least one omnipotent being not learn something?
Be wowed by the intellect of Picard.
That's like us going to the beach and a snail tells us how to be human. I didn't get it before, but this conch came up and he had this advice for me that was
he really turned very valuable lessons from this crab.
He really turned me around. He had this whole perspective on life I hadn't thought of before. That just that bugs the hell out of me when they do that stuff. I hate that.
Is it really only 6 viewers?
No, it's
more than that.
No, it's more than that. No, we're unlike the scientific community, we are humble. Unlike
like
humanity.
I said, we have not been doing this a long time, a few months or whatever. But like I say, there's definitely more than 12 people watching the videos, because we have more than 12 views, unless somebody's got it on loop or whatever. You know what I'm saying?
They're sitting there taking notes.
You're taking notes.
You're gonna get one epic comment of somebody just picking everything apart.
Hey,
There's gonna be Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Yeah, but they haven't sent us one of those plaques with like your 1 million subscribers or 100,000 subscribers or whatever. Like, we're in no danger of getting one of those at this point.
I will create 1 million Google accounts and start watching.
One of the things, Mark, that since we were talking about this whole bit here in humility and all, one of the things I've wanted to ask you guys. And I would love to ask Drew this too, because he may have a little more insight into it. But Why is it that every comic book character ever always and it doesn't matter who it is, always ends up at some point being so powerful they can punch like a black hole into reality? Why is that? Why is our propensity to make, because I was watching, we were talking about in the old days when we were up at GW and we'd sit there and argue about who could beat who, that whole thing.
Who would win?
Right, who would win? And there were some people you just wouldn't bring up in the conversation because you knew they're just outclassed by a number of them. And so, I was interested to see, well, what are the broader conversations about that? And you go to I can't remember the name of the channel, but there's a number of different ones that'll go over the different characters and their power levels and all that, and it didn't matter who they threw up there. Everybody was able to go like multiples of light speed, and had strength enough to actually destroy planets. And
really, even the Punisher.
Everybody is a cosmic version, right?
Jubilee.
Cosmic so and so. There's like multiple versions of course, Doctor Strange and Doctor Doom and all of them, but it didn't matter who it was. You'd have like the Beyonder versus so and so, but apparently so and so over here at some point stole some god's power and was able to do all this crazy stuff and everything. And I don't understand what the propensity is to take it to, as Spinal Tap put it, 11. What I mean?
The real answer to your question, like I know you're asking this in a bit of a facetious way, but I think the real answer is like, oh, my job is to write comic books, right? And you literally have this stable of heroes, and you're writing comics. At some point, you run out of stuff for them to do. Like, oh, let's let them fight this guy. They can fight that guy. Or they can team up with this guy or whatever. And you're like, I got to do something new because every 30 days I got a new comic book coming out. And I got to deliver something that people want to read, and them ratcheting up the powers or doing the crossovers and they're spandex telenovelas at that point where it's.
But see, that's the thing. I never felt like that made it a good story. It always kind of.
I never made the argument that it was a good story. I just it was another story.
And I don't mean to assert that you did. That's the thing. What I'm saying is that it would seem to me that as a reader, that others might feel the same way I did, that it kind of takes the character out of the realm that you like.
I'm starting to miss Drew at this point because I'm sure he would have a lot of input on this particular topic.
Yeah, I'm sure he would. Yeah.
But yeah, it seems like a notepad taking notes.
But it seems like everybody has had the ability to do that. The one fight that they had that I was interested in, that I hadn't really spent a lot of thought on, was Boba Fett versus Predator, and who would win there. Or I guess
clearly
actually it should be phrased, who would be quicker to lose? They each would be in a race to lose, and who could get there first, in the most spectacular and stupid way. And I think Boba Fett would lose.
Well, no, it's
quickest.
Who would win in a fight if George Lucas wasn't writing it?
Who would win in a fight if he wasn't writing it? So who is writing it? That's the question.
Isn't that the question? Quentin
Tarantino. Is it Robert Rodriguez?
Quentin Tarantino, they both die.
So
they both die. By the same method.
The same method.
Predator cuts off Boba Fett's ear, and that would be good. But that I don't know who did they say did win that one. I think they were positing that Boba Fett would win, and I don't know
against
if
the Predator.
Yeah, I don't think that's true.
I don't think it's true based on how he bloody well died in the Star Wars movies.
Yeah.
Return of the Jedi. There's just no way.
Yeah, I've never seen Predator get hit in the back and then fly headlong into a ship and then get eaten.
Predator doesn't have a jetpack that shoots missiles.
That's because he knows it can get hit in the back and he can fly into a yacht and get eaten by a sand octopus. So, but,
that was all Lucas's fault. That was not Boba Fett. You should know that.
It's not Boba Fett. It looked like him to me.
I know, but that's because he's got to do what George Lucas tells him to do.
I like how in your world Boba Fett is real and shows up on set
That's
gets
right.
the
If his
pages to
character
and he's like,
was
wait,
given
what?
the free will, he'd
Yeah.
be like, all right, I'm gonna go do a thing.
Brings him out of carbonite and then feeds him to feeds him to some big snail. Oh, Boba Fett. But yeah, we've talked about Star Trek before. We've talked
We haven't
about
really talked about Star Trek. We talked about it in passing.
Okay, well, there you go. The other thing, okay, let me say this then. Let me say this as well. The other thing I found mystifying, man, I'm having to go at Star Trek. The other thing I found, but you know what? Maybe I need to unburden. This is years and years of Star Trek.
Pent up Star Trek frustration.
Pent up, because when I was a kid, as you all know, when we went home from school, it was like Scooby-Doo, Star Trek, and
Star Trek was the only thing on. Well, before
and the
before you
thing.
get started on your rant, let me rant on Star Trek as well. The thing I hated about Star Trek, because I've always been ambivalent. I don't consider myself a huge fan. I'm more of a fan of the new movies and some of the new shows than all of the stuff growing up and the new Next Generation and Deep Space Nine and whatnot. I was like, they were okay because they were on, and there was like 3 science fiction shows, and that was one of them. But I hated that. Okay, we get on the spaceship, we're going to explore strange new worlds, we fly off into the galaxy, and we end up in freaking Sherwood Forest.
Yes.
Or in 1920s Chicago, running around with Tommy guns. And I was like, what the? This is the dumbest thing ever. You're out in space. What are you doing in Sherwood Forest?
Or 1930s Nazi Germany, or
exactly.
Yeah. Every episode they had, there was whatever show was shooting something across the way. Let's put an episode there.
Yeah, let's go use the. Oh, you're filming you're filming a medieval Hollywood or a Robin Hood movie. Great. We need your set when you're done.
I remember being actually very happy when they ended up fighting something in space. It got so bad that I'd look at an episode and be like, "Oh wait, they're still on the ship. Yeah, they're putting shields up. They're shooting something. Oh, all right.
Yay!
They didn't have to get a costume for this one and go undercover as some human, like 3/4 across the universe.
Why did their guns never work? And I know that's an old trope, but I mean, I'm serious. I mean, why did the phasers or anything? I mean, they always had to go to the photon torpedoes, and I don't know why those didn't become the primary weapon of choice, because the phasers would never bloody well work.
Because the phasers were meant to be less lethal. Because the Federation believed in, of course, saving lives. So they were a peaceful organization. They didn't want to kill anybody. So they had the less lethal options. They also had a pepper spray missile, but they never used it.
Fire that rubber photon torpedo at them.
They had a big extendable arm that would come out of the Enterprise with a little baton on it. But that I'm guessing because it was written by Roddenberry, and I don't know how much he knows about that stuff. I don't know. But the phasers
well, at
never
the time,
worked.
He knew more than anybody else.
I guess. Yeah, But the thing about Spock was the coolest thing in the original series. I loved Spock, and I loved Spock whenever it was an episode where Spock was like getting horny. And he would, go out of control into Kremlock or whatever the hell it was called, and for some reason, Kirk would be the one who'd be like on the short end of the stick for beatings in that episode, because I guess it's got to be, right? But that never made sense to me, but I thought it was cool. Here's a species that almost died because their emotions took them to the brink of self-destruction. So they worked on getting rid of all those emotions until they had to get a mate. Then everything's out the window, right? Well, I don't know about how things
just
work
like in real life.
Yeah, I don't know how things work on Vulcan, right? But everything I've seen in nature, people die because of sex. So that's it. Everything out there, and so the two males fight for the right to mate with it, and it would seem to me that if Vulcan were on the verge of extinction, that's the big reason. And so when you get rid of emotions because you were almost destroyed, you almost destroyed yourselves. What was it you were almost destroying yourselves over? What did you get so pissed about? That you decided to keep the mating ritual? You kept that. The one thing that you would figure logically they could say, you two genetically match up. Let's put you two together.
The women wanted to keep it. They were just like, no, we like this. I want you to fight over us.
The women. Yeah. What would be funny is they should have, and maybe I got to, see if I can find that episode, because I got to see if it is like in nature, where you got the two males out there just beating the hell out of each other, right, for the attention of the female and the rights to mate and all that. And then they pan over to the females, and the females don't care. They're over there like chewing grass and, you know, foraging and commiserating with each other and all. They
Getting their
don't
nails
care.
done.
They don't care one bit, right? And then whoever wins, they can, you know, come over. Oh, you won? Oh, good for you. But I wonder if they did that, because that's how it actually would have been. But Spock was the coolest one out of the original series. Spock I liked. Out of the Next Generation, my favorite was Data.
Yeah, I think Data was my favorite as well.
Data was awesome. And Data, though, the only issue with Data is that there was no reason for anyone else to be on the ship. Because Data could do everything. He could do it better than any one of them. He was far stronger, far smarter, far faster, all that stuff. He was just amazing. And so I'm not sure why anyone else was on the bridge.
Because Data was so childlike and didn't understand the world that he had a cat named Spot, that he needed everybody else to tell him like what to do.
Okay, so have the captain sitting in his quarters, gives out his daily orders for, hey, Data, we want to do this. We want to go over here. And then that's it. That's all you need to do. Data goes up there, does his thing. Because you're right. You're right.
I agree with you. I don't think that makes for compelling episodic TV, though.
That was the issue I would have had. But I wouldn't get rid of Data, because Data is awesome. I like his character so much.
But you didn't.
My favorite character of all time is Wesley Crusher. Because he was like me. He was a kid. And he was on this warship. It's like, because, you know, every warship has a kid on it running around.
Yeah. With inflation, that ship is probably like $250 million or something like that. And they got a 16-year-old out there driving it. A nuclear warship, nuclear carrier.
What if our biggest and best aircraft carrier?
Yeah, that's what
run like the Starship Enterprise, right?
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, I don't have my license yet. Okay, come on up here. Let's get you some experience.
That's right, Captain Daniels. Bring your son over here.
Now remember, you want to toot the horn. Let everyone know you're coming.
All right, we have to go ashore for these peace talks. We're going to leave you in charge.
If only the Enterprise had a horn. Now that would be awesome.
Wouldn't it? It would be great. And he was named Wesley. Wesley. Is that not ridiculous? Wesley Crusher. Oh, Wesley. It should have been. You know what the show should have been is Data and Wesley Crusher. That's what it should have been. Nobody else on there, just Data and Wesley.
Called Data and
buddy
Wesley.
Comedy.
Yeah. Captain Picard could be the old curmudgeon that he calls up every now and again when they've gotten in a fix, you know.
So that's the problem with Star Trek.
But they had at least some decent episodes there. They did. The Next Generation got.
But when you put out 700 episodes, a couple of them are bound to be good.
Yeah. And Jean-Luc Picard, I thought, was a great captain. I thought his was a great character. Patrick Stewart was an excellent actor to have do that. That was the best move they made. Was putting him in there, because he was amazing.
Yeah, it brought the whole thing together. I mean, because any one of those other characters unto themselves is just not enough to carry that show.
No, not at all.
Well, Star Trek has always been about the ensemble cast. You know what I mean? Yeah.
But I would still watch
who's leading it, but
I would still watch a show that was just Patrick Stewart, because I mean, again, you don't need anybody to fly the ship. You can just say computer, and it will say yes, and then you tell it what to do. So I mean, even if it was just Jean-Luc Picard sitting on the deck, I don't need anybody else. They're there.
Yeah. True, like, but I tell you what, though, if anybody has seen Picard, the series, man, how the mighty have fallen.
That's what I heard. That's why I didn't want to watch it.
Oh man, yeah, not a huge fan of that.
Yeah, I heard that one.
He's good. Like I said, he's a good actor, and I like him.
He's doing his part, but that writing is awful.
Yeah, like the show itself is oof.
I like the dude they have playing Pike in Strange New Worlds.
Yeah, like I'm like I say, I'm enjoying Strange New Worlds. I think I'm 4 episodes in or something like that, and yeah, like I'm enjoying it so thus far.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Probably more than any of the other series. I like Deep Space Nine because it was different. They weren't on a spaceship flying around. They were on a station. Everybody had to come to them because they ended up in front of this wormhole. I didn't mind it. I thought it was okay.
I didn't like that. I didn't like the follow-on to that. What was the other one that was a Star Trek knockoff, an Enterprise knockoff? It wasn't Deep Space Nine. Yeah, Voyager. That wasn't good. I didn't, I think once they get away from the Enterprise and they get away from what the story was, it starts to fall apart for me.
Yeah, that's the thing. You can only tell that story but so many ways, and it's always going to be the same thing. It's always going to be an up with people kind of thing.
Yeah, but I think that's one of the things I like about Strange New Worlds is they're not trying to give me anything new. They're just doing it in a new way because it's no longer the 1960s, 70s. Now we have the modern day, and you have the characters you're somewhat familiar with. But so you're doing the nostalgia thing. You know what I mean? It's kind of like the Star Trek movies where, that's not William Shatner. It's now Chris Pine. You're like, oh, but they're playing the same character. Let's see this new take on that character. So I think that's one of the things I do like about the new series so far.
One of the things I found interesting, Mark, since you bring that up, so many ways to do this kind of thing, is the House of Dragons has started, and that's one of my favorite stories of Martin's. Is that love that story, and so many people who watched Game of Thrones I've seen say, I don't know, I'll watch it, but the first episode, it just felt like it was more of the same. I already know who the characters are going to be. This one's going to be the bad guy. This one's going to be the good guy and all that. And I would think that this mystifies me, because I would think that people at this point wouldn't be so quick, especially with the Game of Thrones series, to try to predict, well, this person wants to do this person wants to do that, and that kind of, because they're all wrong. Every one of them is wrong about what it is and how these characters are going to turn out and all of that, and what their motivations are. It just blew me away that they were so quick to sit there and say, well, obviously this is this and this is this. What the hell's the matter with you?
Like,
didn't you see the first one?
Yeah.
Right. That just baffled me. I didn't get that. I wonder if people were actually watching the same one. Did you ever get into Game of Thrones, the books or the series, Kelly?
I watched a couple episodes of the series, but I never really went into it all that far. I saw the House of Dragons thing. I didn't watch it, but I saw perusing through stuff, and I've seen that. I've been debating about watching it because I was thinking, oh well, you didn't watch the rest of it. I mean, start with this, just watch this and see what that's all about.
Well, it is a prequel one.
But I thought it was cool to see Harrenhal, not destroyed. I was like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah. I remember when I read that book or that story, because it was not like
it's like a history book. He was doing the Tolkien thing where he was trying to come out with like a history.
Well, he did, and that was one of the ones that he explored more in depth. And I remember I was going on a trip for training council workshop, and I had gotten that, and I forget where I got it, but I had gotten that, and I was reading it on the plane and went through it during that trip. And I tried to get Helena to read it too, because I told her, I said, man, this is good. I like this one. This is really good. And she wouldn't read it. Couldn't get her to do it. She loved the show, loves watching the show, but she doesn't like reading the book. And so yeah, I was glad they chose that story to do as the next one, and I hope they keep it the same as the book, because it's got one of my favorite lines in all of his books ever. Is one of the last lines of the book. It was awesome. So I'm hoping to keep that, but I think it'll piss a lot of people off.
All right, and I'm liking it because in Game of Thrones, the buildup was her getting these dragons and then getting grown to where they were useful. Here, everybody's got dragons. You know what I mean? And like that opening crawl, almost they were like, "Yeah, House Targaryen has like 12 dragons or something, or fully grown dragon." And I was like, "Oh, okay, that's like their Air Force." You know what I mean? I was like, "Oh, this is kind of neat,"
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, they're not at the height of their power, but they're kind of middle ways there,
Hmm.
And so, yeah, this, as a matter of fact, is one of the reasons they don't have dragons later on, is this whole
Right.
story. And so it's really a cool time to explore and see what's going on and all that stuff that happens. And I really love the fact that they kept the stuff in there, or had the stuff in there about like the pregnancy and how things went, and because that was kind of gruesome. That's how pregnancies were. What
Hmm.
I know it's a fantasy world and all, but the analogous time that it would have
Yeah.
been, and that's been interesting to see how many people identify or who they identify with in that moment. Because I've noticed, like when she was sitting there watching that, because they're cutting away from that to the jousting tournament at the same time, and you have these horrible, horrible killings going on and beatings and stuff in the tournament, right?
Oh yeah, they were
And
very
then
graphic. Oh my gosh, yeah.
and then you cut over to the pregnancy and this horrible, horrible pregnancy going on, and this, very primitive C-section happening. And it was funny seeing Helena automatically project and attach to the pregnancy one and forget entirely about the horror going on at the jousting thing. And I just find that interesting to see how people project on those two different aspects. I love that they did that because it shows how, oh, I can't believe they did that, so horrible and all that. Meanwhile, this dude over here is getting his face crushed.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, I don't know, seems pretty brutal, whichever side
Yeah.
you're on.
Yeah, like he signed up for that, you know?
But yeah, I really like that they did that. And Daemon Targaryen, great character. Yeah, yeah. Martin is such a good writer. He really is. I don't think he's ever going to finish his books, though. I think those books are just gonna. That's it. They're they're nebulously done.
Yeah, which is a shame because then we're stuck with the Game of Thrones ending.
Yeah, I know, but maybe that's better. Maybe
Mhm.
in a sense that's better because at this point, I wonder sometime maybe he could come up with something that would be actually on par with a lot of the surprises we had before. And you look back at those surprises
See,
that came
it
before, and
doesn't
you're
even
like,
have to be a
makes sense.
surprise. I would just like something
Well,
better.
no, well,
You know what I mean?
but see, this is what I mean is that when I say surprise, what I mean is that it's shocking to you, right?
Mm,
And then when you look back on it, you're like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. I can see why that happened. It's not
mhm.
what would have been written if it was a traditional show,
Yeah.
but if this were real life, I can see why that would happen. And of course, that's because he draws most of his inspiration from actual historic events and that kind of thing, back when dragons actually flew. And so I kind of think if he lets it just kind of lie, maybe that's actually for the best, man. Kind of like with Tolkien stuff, where he had an idea for after the Hobbit and what would have come after that, but
But it is non-traditional storytelling if you did that, though. I mean, I agree with you, and I would dig that because I like sort of the unneat endings of things.
yeah,
Like it doesn't all have to be wrapped up in a bow, but just biologically, people need things to return to home.
they
Um,
want it to. They want it to.
yeah,
Um,
it feels
but
unsettling without it.
But see, don't you think that people, when I know we've discussed this before, don't you think that people actually dig the movies that don't have this, the
Mm-mm.
calm, everything's good kind of thing? The ones they talk about are the ones they truly remember. The ones they really remember how they felt when they saw it are the ones that have an ending that's not happy.
I think most people at the end of the day want something that's happy at the end. And I think because these things are entertainment and you want the entertainment to be the escape from the reality. Because in a real world sense, the good guy, doesn't even come close to winning all the time. It's not even a majority, right? It's a very mixed bag. And so
Hmm.
I think that movies like that are memorable because they stick with you. But I think that if it was done all the time, people would not like it at all. I think you can get away with it on occasion, and people will be okay. I get it. That's our once a year dalliance in reality and entertainment.
See, I think that you'll have the odd one out, like Infinity War, that is both um, emotionally impactful
Hmm.
and successful, but then you'll have the ones that are emotionally impactful, but not nearly as successful as something that would have had the happy ending, like
Sure.
Seven or that kind of thing. But I think people remember those movies far
Hmm.
more. Saving Private
Probably.
Ryan and
Yeah.
that kind of
Yeah.
thing. I'll never forget how quiet that theater was when I went and saw Saving Private Ryan, and then after the movie was over, and there was no talking, none.
Yeah.
Everybody just kind of got up and somberly walked out.
Hmm.
And those moments, you don't get that after Top Gun Maverick or, any Tom Cruise movie, really. They all end up with him, supposedly dying, and then he comes back. It's got to be written into his contract, I guess. I have to look like I died, and then at the end, I come back, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're right. He draws them in. He draws them in. But I guarantee you, or I would bet, I won't guarantee, but I would bet most people don't really remember how they felt in those movies. They have the idea that, oh, I felt all right. I was in a happy mood when I left, right? But there's no emotional bang that goes
Right.
with it.
Right.
Whereas Gran Torino's another great example. That one's got an ending that, gut punches a lot of people. And, they at first are like, what the hell? I thought, Clint Eastwood, I thought he was, and all that. But you remember it. You remember how you felt. So, yeah. Yeah. That's, for me anyway, those have been the kind of movies that I've always been drawn to. But they always seem more real.
Right.
When I watch something else, do I like any of the other ones? Let me think about that. Because I know Mark is the polar opposite of what I am with that stuff, with stories
Yeah,
like
I
that.
don't think you could just sit down and enjoy a movie that is, mindless entertainment. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
I'll watch Armageddon and be like, yeah, Bruce Willis, drill the heck out of that asteroid. Go get him.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's any of the popcorn flicks that I've really, really come out of just like loving it, enjoying it. I guess you could say the other Marvel movies. You could say that. I did enjoy those, but maybe that's because I was nostalgic for the comic books or something.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe. What about you, Kelly? Or not even movies, but books maybe that had ended that way or any of that stuff?
It all depends on mood. I'm definitely an appreciator of movies that end indelicately. Like I'm okay with the bad guy winning. I'm okay with the good guy winning at a cost, right? That
Yeah.
it's not a you know it's not a victimless end. Um,
Yeah.
but I can definitely go in for the feel good flick of the summer and be completely contented watching that. Like Maverick.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah, like I say, Maverick. I felt entertained by the movie. I felt I got my money's worth out of the movie. Yes, I had things to criticize, but yeah, I mean, I was okay with the fact that I went and saw it.
Maybe it's the fact that I feel cheated. Maybe
Yeah.
that's it. I feel like you don't this is what it is. Okay, I know what it is. I feel angry when an author or a writer or director or whoever it is, a story creator, I hate it when they try to take me down an emotional path
Hmm.
without any intention of actually going there.
Right.
And so I've gotten to the point now where I'll look at something, I'm like, well, why am I supposed to feel bad about this? I know this
Right.
is not how it's going to be. Like in Sandman, when the brother gets pulled down the vortex thing, and everybody's like, "Oh my God, no, not him!" And I'm like, "Come on, man, he's coming back. Stop it. What's the point?" You know, and the whole maybe Star Trek was part of that. Was that I knew at the end it was going to be like Love Boat. It was going to be like Three's Company, where at the end
Mhm.
everybody's back and oh Bones, you crazy old, and oh you Vulcan, green blooded, and all that stuff.
Mhm.
And so I felt like, well, why did I watch this? What was the point?
Right. Right.
That's kind of
Because
the
The
there's
thing.
point
there's
was it was comfortable and they could get you to watch the commercials.
Well, yeah, there's most definitely that.
It was the 70s. You could have put
But-
anything on, and I'd have had
That's
no
right.
choice.
That's
look, I
right.
mean-
There's 4 channels. Pick one.
I mean, look, I watched Magnum PI. Sean, you watched Magnum PI too.
Magnum
I
PI was good.
Loved Magnum PI, right?
Yes.
But nothing's going to happen to Higgins. Nothing's going to happen to Magnum.
Yeah.
Well, but I will give Magnum credit on one point though, and I'm glad you brought that up, Kelly, because that was actually a turning point for TV. Do you remember the episode with him and Ivan?
Yes.
Yeah. Where they blew up his friend in the Ferrari, and it was supposed to be him. Yeah.
Yeah, because that arc, it had cost, and that's what shocked me, right?
Yeah.
Because I mean, his friend gets blown up, and I was like, "Wow, really? That guy's dead? How about that?" And then the bad guy, of course, getting ready to get away and all that, and you're thinking, "Oh, that's gonna suck. He's getting away." Oh, all that, and then Magnum shows up and caps him. I was like, "Wow."
Yeah, that was one of them, and that was like a 2-part.
Yeah,
it was a 2-part
event series kind of thing where they ended up going to Laos or someplace like that, right?
I remember thinking, man, because I remember that was I think the first one I'd ever seen like that on TV. Yeah. And other than, MASH where they, killed Colonel what's his face, but that was because he quit the show.
Right. Yeah.
But
I remember on that one, they were like, listen, MASH was always weird to me because this is about a war, but it's a comedy. Yeah. And there's not much that's funny about war, but so they did a good job. But then when the guy left the show, they're like, listen, this is about war. We can't just give them the happy ending. And that's why they, one of the reasons that went into killing off this character was to kind of like, yep, this is a funny show. There's a lot of jokes going on, but this is war. And here's your beloved character that didn't make it home, even though, how tragic is that? He's on his way home when he ends up getting killed. And so like, that's one of those things I remember from MASH. I think everybody remembers that from MASH.
Isn't it
episode?
Wasn't it that deal where they didn't tell the cast that was the ending that they had written? And so
I didn't hear about that. That's even better.
They didn't tell him about it. They just had Charles, what was his name? Oh, the actor who played
Radar O'Reilly.
Radar, right? And they had him come in and read it and got everybody's honest reaction to that. And cool. So I thought that was cool. The Magnum one I thought was really good because it wasn't because he left the show or something. They just did that because it was for the story, right? And that was not PC. That was the hero doesn't sit there and just cap somebody, who's unarmed and all. It wasn't like, oh, but Magnum, I'm unarmed, and then suddenly he pulls a gun and now Magnum is justified. It was
should arm himself.
Right. It was right. It was Unforgiven, right? It was, hey, did you see the sunrise? You ain't seeing it set. And, shot him. That was great. And that actually, maybe that was what ruined me for other regular stories, because every time you're going to
know what? I'm with you. I hadn't really thought, that was one of my favorite episodes. I think I even had it on VHS where I'd watch it again.
Yeah.
And I'm with you because I hated Three's Company for that reason. That it was always the same thing, rehashing and hilarity and news.
Jack was always
like you said, Love Boat, and I'm with you on it. Yeah, Jack never shot anybody.
A very special episode of Three's Company. Mr. Farley's taking it too far.
Mr. Farley wants his rent. That's right. But then after Magnum, the one that I think reinforced it for me was Miami Vice. And I remember in Miami Vice, they had a lot of cost and stuff. Michael Mann didn't shy away from that. But I remember there was an episode about a dude who was making like snuff films or something like that. And then he got away and he went to like the Bahamas or something. And I remember at the end of the show that Crockett comes walking up to him. The dude's sitting there lounging on his chair, and Crockett comes up and the dude's kind of smarmy about, hey, brother, no hard feelings. You were never going to win this anyway. I always had an out, and I was, so on your way. And he shoots him, kills him while he's sitting there in the chair. And I remember I was thinking, that's the way to do this stuff. That is that's the good stories.
Yeah. It was kind of they had some stakes in that show. Remember that one time there was like that the sniper and he's shooting the guys on a boat, and the the their captain ended up rolling the wrong way, and the captain ended up getting killed by the sniper.
Yeah,
if I'm remembering it correctly. So like,
no, I think that was it.
They did a few things in that show where you're like, oh, okay, whereas when you're watching most shows, I'm not worried about Special Victims Unit, who's going to be on the show on the next series, or the next episode.
You guys remember way more about Miami Vice than I do.
Hey, Miami Vice was it back in the day. I was watching the heck out of that show.
It was on Netflix, and I was like, hey, girls, check this out, right? And I turned it on. Yeah. I couldn't make it to the end of the first episode. I was like, this is the worst thing I've ever seen.
Right, but we didn't know any better back then. Like, it was the coolest thing on TV.
You got to look for the times when they were able to actually push the envelope. That's the thing.
Yeah. Episode 1 is not when they're going to do that.
Right. They had to work within the system they had at the time, which is why those moments were so memorable. Right.
Right. And going back to Star Trek, Star Trek did the same thing with the first interracial kiss on TV between Uhura and Captain Kirk.
Oh, I thought you meant Spock and Kirk.
Spock and Kirk. That came later. But like, for real, like here's this campy science fiction show that is trying to push those boundaries. I want to throw logic out the window.
I've worked so long to subdue my emotions, and yet Coplock forces me to.
I think I downloaded the wrong Star Trek.
Let's take this to the holodeck. Oh man, but yeah, I'm sorry. What were you saying, Mark?
I don't remember what I was saying. But no, the point I was making is even this campy science fiction show found its opportunity to push some boundaries. You know what I mean? Yeah. And did. Okay. And even, like I say, Magnum stepped out of it, pushed a few boundaries to be like, maybe it doesn't have to always end up the exact same way. Here I am, I'm on the beach, and here's a case, and I'm going to spend 45 minutes solving the case with the help of my buddies. And Higgins is going to be Prim, right? Because that is 90% of the shows.
Yeah.
Of Magnum PI in this example, but we can step out of that. And like I say, I hadn't really thought about it, but you bringing up that one, kind of 2-episode arc was like, that was memorable. That was, that did push those boundaries.
Yeah. And I think that's, if I had to pick a moment, I think that's the moment where it changed me for what I enjoy or expect out of a story.
Yeah.
And so every time after that, it became more and more of, well, I can tell you're trying to pull my heartstrings. I can tell you're trying to put me in this place, but you're never going to go there. You're just not going to do it. Heart and Heart are coming back. Simon and Simon are not dying, that kind of stuff. And I never felt invested in that.
Yeah.
And so those were never special.
And I think that's part of the reason that The Walking Dead comic and the show and Game of Thrones books and the series are as popular as they are, because they're like, nope, we will kill the main character, and you're not. And I don't feel either of them did it for shock value. Because otherwise they'd kill one and be done with it. Yeah. But like Game of Thrones, I spent the first, 4 books trying to figure out who this series was about. And you watch the whole show and you're like trying to figure, like, I told you my wife and I were watching it, and Khal Drogo and Khaleesi are married and they're happy, and she's like, yeah, it's going to be them taking over the 7 kingdoms. This is going to be good. Nope. That didn't work. And she's like, oh, I thought it was going to be like the 2 of them,
Yeah.
And that didn't work out, did it?
Isn't that strange to think about then? Because then storytelling really has not changed. It really hasn't changed in all the decades, or all the centuries, really, but especially recent memory, since we've had, movies and TV and social media and all that. Storytelling has stayed very much the same, that you can sit there and reference Game of Thrones as being so shocking to people in how no one was safe, and people were shocked. So-and-so's dead? What the hell? That kind of thing.
Which when you think about it, really mirrors real life more than what we've been doing. Like when you look at World War II. It's like Yamamoto, we found out where his plane was and shot it down. And the Japanese like, oh man, That was our
Yeah.
guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He was like the star of the show, and we were like, nope, not for long, and they shot him down or whatever. As an example, like in real, even with what's going on in the Ukraine, they're like, here's this huge list of officers and colonels and all these people that have been killed in the fighting. Like, that happens in real life. There isn't like some one guy who's so important to this effort. Maybe if it's like the president of the country or the leader of the country or whatever, like I'm sure that Ukraine would have a hard time if their leader was no longer with them. But then again, maybe not. That maybe that would inspire them even more, and like his widow would step up, or some general would step up and like lead that charge. Like, talking about that abstractly, I don't think any of us would be surprised at that turn of events.
Mm-hmm.
Yet, for whatever reason in storytelling, we're like, no, here's the guys we've introduced you to. They're the ones that have to survive this whole thing. And again, that's not so bad because you have to follow someone in the story. You know what I'm saying?
That's why the later seasons, once they got past Martin stuff, you could see the difference because people started getting plot armor.
Right.
And that as soon as that happens, that takes me out of it. Why am I going to be invested in this when I already know how it's going to end?
Yeah.
And so, like with Top Gun Maverick, with what were we watching the other day? Helena had us watching something, and I know what it was. It's that she put on that new Stallone movie, right? The one where he's the superhero guy.
I've seen a preview or heard of it, but I haven't seen it. Yeah.
And I'm not kidding you. In the first couple minutes, I already knew what the twist was. I already knew what it was. I turned to Helena and I said, "Oh, well, okay, I know who it is. He's this guy," and I didn't have to pay attention to the rest of the movie. At the end of it, turns out, yep, I was right, and I was like, well, there you go. I didn't miss anything. That's all right.
But I don't think a lot of people have a connection to that style of writing, though, to push that boundary, because it requires something else of you as the storyteller. And I think most people go for the easy thing. They go for the thing that's going to guarantee a paycheck for them as a writer, and so it becomes that formulaic bit that pleases the suits. And I think it's a shame if we're talking about Game of Thrones, and I didn't watch the show, but I do know that there was an end to the books, right? As far as the story stopped here while everybody waits the new book. And I know that the series went beyond that. And I, as a non-viewer, just as a person in this world that respects good storytelling, then became greatly concerned, because who's writing that next spot?
Yeah, right? not the right.
Yeah, and see, here's the thing. Like, but with Game of Thrones, they gave us 5-6 seasons of amazing. Yeah. Right. Like, it was one of the best shows on television. Like, it just was. This was amazing television entertainment. I was like, this is awesome. And so when they got to that point, and they're like, okay, this last season is going to be like just 9 episodes long, but they're going to be a little bit longer or whatever. Everybody's freaking out. I was like, look, man, they've given me 7 episodes of awesome. I was like, I'll give them, the benefit of the doubt. I was like, here's their track record. I was like, let them do what they're going to do. I was like, I trust it. And I literally have had that conversation with people or I was like, hey man, I'm like, whatever you got, bring it. If that's the way you think you need to tell the story, 9 episodes or 18 episodes or whatever. I'm like, you do your thing. I'm on board. And to have that trust abused so thoroughly with what they actually delivered, I was like, oh my gosh, like from the beginning, we've teased these White Walker zombies as the main threat. They finally get through the wall and you tie it up like one day's ride from the wall. Like wonder if it was like 2 days on a horse, right? And that's as far as they get, and you just tie it up with a bow and wrap the whole thing up. Felt so cheap. You know what I mean? Like, this is the main bad guy. This is the threat of the ages. Has always been the reason for this wall, right? And you just tied it up. Oh, she has a knife and she drops it. Stab. And they do the whole clone. They do the whole clone war thing. We destroyed the mothership and all the droids fall over. I was like, cut.
Friggin' Naboo. The curse of Naboo.
It was I know, we'll try the Naboo maneuver.
And that was the thing. I remember I told Helena, I said, I don't want to watch the show. Not because the actual ending they had. I was actually okay with the idea of their ending, I was
Like
okay with that. But the
Yeah, like if I saw that on an
execution,
outline, right, I'd be like, "Oh, cool." But the
right?
execution
The
was so
execution wasn't.
terrible.
But the thing is that this is the thing, Mark. I felt the exact same way. I felt like I love the fact that there is this true, unadulterated, pure evil, just man, this thing is getting ready to come down and wipe you the hell out. And all you're doing is focusing on this politics and all these things that really don't matter and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was waiting so much for the, show to get to that point where we told you this stuff doesn't matter. Now you see, their
Right,
hubris,
and they never did any of it.
it never had consequence, never once. And it was
like in the small way that Khaleesi and her army did go north, right? So it did, they saw it. So like, I'm not defending it, but like they were smart enough, like, oh, I could go sack King's Landing, or I can go north and do the thing, and they, but
and they had
it was unsatisfying to say the least.
They had Morpheus Jr. in there in the glade, as the trap for the Night King, and Theon, you're a good man, and that whole thing. And then Theon dies and he didn't matter, apparently. What was the point of him being there? Matter of fact, all they had to do was send Arya
to give him a heroic death. That was like everyone else just like died in all these wacky ways, and like, no, he gets a redemption arc and a heroic death.
But it was kind of dumb because
it was. I know. I get it. They're like, we got to do something for Theon. Let's write this in, and it was dumb.
They didn't need the entire army. All they needed to do apparently was send Arya. Here you go. Here's a knife. Go forth. Kill him. He won't be seeing you coming.
Just hide in this bush.
Use that special maneuver that he won't be expecting. Ha ha! I dropped the knife. Or did I?
Well, no. She trains to be a faceless man, right? She's like this badass assassin who can take the face of other people or whatever. And she's like, I'm gonna go kill. I don't know if it was Cersei, whoever she was going to King's Landing to kill. I think it was Cersei at this point. And I'm like, and then in that scene, her and the Hound are literally walking through the front door. And I'm like, wait a second. You are literally in the company of this big dude with half his face burned off, who is very well known. And you're this secret assassin and you're walking through the front door of like sneak in there, and do some cool like faceless man stuff and do it. But instead, no, she walks in there and ends up not killing anybody and finds a horse and then decides to go become Dora the Explorer.
Yeah,
it was so dumb. It was so dumb.
It was it was so
spoilers, Kelly. Sorry.
Well, now I don't have to watch the show.
I feel like it's an amazing show.
You don't have to watch those last few seasons. That's the thing. Don't watch the last season at all. You can watch the last 2 episodes of season 7.
If you want to get in on how much fun we're having ripping on it, then by all means watch that last season. But I would recommend you do something else while it's on.
No.
It was so dumb.
Yeah, it was very frustrating.
And it's a shame because it was such. The first few seasons are so amazing. Like I say, I'm watching them again, and they're so good to have that kind of fall off because it's.
But this is
crazy.
This is actually what I was talking about people say they want one thing, but they don't. They want the other thing. It's just nobody out there believes that somebody would say other than what they actually mean. So they'll sit there and say, oh, no, I want the happy endings. I want this stuff, and if you do this, if you kill so-and-so, I'm not going to watch anymore. I'm going to be done with the show, that kind of thing. And then what happens when that happens, or you kill them in droves, people come back. They're like, well, I got to see what happens now, Oh, that's it. I'm done with this show. And then they walk off and then they come right back. So what happened? Is he, that kind of thing. Yeah. That's how people are. That's exactly how they are. But I don't know. It's weird. It's like those who aren't as creatively bent. I don't know how to word it. Those who aren't. I don't know. They don't trust it.
It felt just like a little bit of. It felt again. I'm going to go with too corporate. Corporate wants to be safe. Yeah. And if you're following the George R.R. Martin playbook, well, you're following what already has a built-in audience. You know what I'm saying? So like George R.R. Martin took the risks and the chances, and those paid off in literary form. And so now you're adapting that property. People would be more upset if you changed it. That didn't happen in the books. With mild exceptions. Obviously, you got to consolidate characters and tweak the plot a little bit just because the books are so much more than what you could do in the movie. Like, people get that.
Yeah.
But then the books ran out and they're like, oh, then the corporate gets to come in and go, what can we do that is, going to get us over the finish line and make us a bunch of money and make us, not piss off all the viewers or whatever, I can, and come to find out the showrunners were like, hey, I want to go do something else. Let's wrap this thing up. You could have gone for 5 or 6 more seasons. Personally, I would have had the White Walkers overrun the Seven Kingdoms.
Wouldn't that have been awesome? Wouldn't that have been great?
That's where it was going. Like, and again, I don't know what George has in mind, but I don't picture. At no point did I ever picture this ending at Winterfell.
I know. Wouldn't it have been awesome to actually have the Night King actually win, and humanity has to go into some and now you got another story about humanity, and the summer coming instead of the winter, and all of that.
Yeah, maybe they got to spend the whole 10 years of winter hiding on the Iron Isles because it's the only place they can't get or something.
Or maybe they never end up going back. Maybe they never get it back. Maybe they have to go someplace else. It ends up not being what they thought, and they're booted out of there.
Right, but from the beginning, it was a Song of Fire and Ice. So that the dragons are going to have to end up fighting the White Walkers.
No, I understand, but he
in
never
some
said,
format. You know what I mean?
He never said what the timeline would be.
Agreed,
so what I'm saying is you could take it an unexpected route of, instead of tying it up at the end, leaving it even more nebulous that, the prince that was promised, but you don't know who that is.
Yeah.
We led you to believe it might be this guy, but we never told you it was. Maybe he's the one who, they go off to Volantis and start something over there and then come back 100 years from now and fight or something. I don't know. You could go all kinds of different routes with it, but they never explored it. They went the usual way. And then suddenly I'm supposed to get all excited about a battle with Cersei.
Yeah.
Come on,
right?
Man.
Senator Kelly, yeah, right? Sure. I agree. All right. Well, on that note, we're all in agreement about how bad the Game of Thrones ended.
Well, yeah. And, so I think that explains my feelings on Star Trek.
Yeah. I'm with you, because I think what you're saying is Star Trek is very it's very self-contained. Each episode is, it's almost like a police procedural. Here's a mystery. Here's a thing that we need to figure out what went wrong or how to fix it or whatever. And then by the end of the episode, we come together and use our ingenuity and we do it. Yeah. Rinse and repeat, right? Magnum PI was the same way. All these other shows are the same way. But the ones that stand out, the ones that we remember, are the ones that kind of break that.
Yeah.
But you have to do it well. It's not just, look at us, we're being different. That doesn't work. You know what I mean? Like, either.
You have to have a point.
So, yeah, you got to have a point. There's got to be a reason for it. Like, you want to kill off a main character? Awesome. But not because, we have too many and this guy didn't want to renew his contract.
And don't forget,
I don't want to hear about that behind the scenes. I want you to tell me a compelling story, and whether this guy's going to be in next season or not, I don't care about his contract. Why did he die? Was it tragic? Did it move the story forward? Was it just to show me how bad King Joffrey is? I don't know. You know what I mean?
And don't forget, not to sell Magnum short on just the one episode, they had another one where he had a serial killer who was killing prostitutes in honor of Magnum. And he had to try to track him down because this dude was out there killing women in essentially his name, And that was really cool too. Because that was a really nasty, brutal story, especially for the time.
Yeah.
And so, anyway. Yeah.
Or that episode with Frank Sinatra.
Yeah, Frank Sinatra. No.
I'm glad you jumped into that, because I was like, what? I'm not sure that. So, have any of you watched the new incarnation of Magnum PI?
No, I refuse.
No.
I watched a few episodes of it and was like, yeah, I'm done with this.
Yeah.
I was like, this will never approach, I mean, that's the thing. Is like, I don't think they're true,
But that's the problem that I think we have is that I think people have lost a lot in the art of storytelling. That all we can think to do from a corporate standpoint, because everybody's gone corporate, and it's all about the money that you make as the creator. It's from the corporate entity. It's the money they get from advertising and from product development and the aftermarket sale of stuff. We're not telling a story for the sake of telling a story. I think when you talk about the Magnum PI thing, let's not forget that when Magnum PI came out, there's still a lot of Vietnam vets who are still fresh out of that whole bit.
Right,
And
right.
and he's telling a story there. The story is being told that has an emotional impact on somebody who actually experienced a very deeply emotional thing.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's having a point, but we're not into that. I mean, it's all about, well, that'll never fly. We won't get sales on that. And I think that's sad. That does us all a disservice
Yep.
at the
It's
end of the
just
day.
like it's just like the field of science.
Exactly. Exactly. Exactly.
That's right. There's
Writers
a
need-
lot of people who've come out of tragic scientific situations
Right.
that
It's all
Right.
it's all corporate.
Yeah.
that are fighting against the corporate interests of storytelling.
Yeah.
Right. After Madame Curie, it all got corporate. And
That's
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I should do that sometime, is track the ups and downs. This is where the storytelling and the medium got smarter, and then aliens and everything comes down.
Yeah.
Then,
Yeah.
I want a
back
felt
up
board
with this.
for our next
Yeah,
podcast.
we could put maybe a zombie baseline across, because
But it
I
won't
think
make any-
they're
it
vanilla.
wouldn't-
They can be done well or poorly. I think
It wouldn't make
our
any sense,
midpoint
though.
is zombies.
My felt board wouldn't make any sense, because of course you'd have aliens down here, but you'd have Big Trouble in Little China all the way up here.
Probably there's no aliens in Big Trouble in Little China. It makes perfect sense.
No, I mean for the lows and highs of storytelling. And,
Right.
You know, so yeah, it wouldn't make
this
sense.
doesn't make any sense
If
at
only
all.
Sigourney Weaver had a 10 demon bag.
That would be
Now that's
awesome.
a movie I would watch.
All right, boys. Well, thank you very much.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think we've talked ourselves out today. So
Yes,
good
yes,
job.
we have. Good
All
job.
right.
Until next time.
All right, gentlemen.
Yeah.
See ya.
This concludes our Speak Nerd and Enter broadcast.